Welcome to the RIT Nerds Podcast, episode number 6, part B, with our second part of our interview with Jeff Alter out of the Florida Rapid Intervention Operations Group. We had to split our podcast in two because we ran out of space, and we didn't want to cut anything out of it. So we'll go ahead with repeating Jeff's intro and pick up with the second half of our interview. Jeff started his career in the fire service in 1976 as a volunteer firefighter and became a paid firefighter working at Martin County Fire and Rescue, then moving on to Marion County Fire and Rescue, and finishing his career at Seminole Tribe Fire Rescue in 2015. He was a backstepper, a driver, a lieutenant, a battalion chief, a district chief, an assistant chief, and finally a deputy chief of operations. He spent 20 years on one of Florida's Type 1 incident management teams as a team safety officer, responding to wildfires and hurricanes and all sorts of other hazards. Recognizing the need around the state that something had to be done to get people back on track in training and believing in the RIT concept, he developed an idea of holding a statewide RIT competition at the Fire Rescue East Conference and to do it on the show floor. In 2012, Jeff helped start the Florida Rapid Intervention Operations Group, otherwise known as FROG, and they are now in their 8th year. The first year they had 6 departments compete. This year they had 30 teams and had to turn away 4 teams because of time constraints. If you haven't seen them, check out their Facebook page, and for more information, reach out and contact them. Their contact information's posted up on their Facebook page. And that's enough of me talking, and let's get started.
Okay, well, in closing, I guess one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Jeff, is you had a mayday on a fire ground yourself in your career. If you didn't mind talking about that and sort of leading us through your position during that time, what happened, what your role was for the mayday itself, and what the major takeaways were, both good and bad. And
well, this particular, let me see. This particular one was an apartment building. I think there were 16 units, 8 on the bottom, 8 on the top, and crew went in. And one of the things, this was a new department for me. I had only been there about 6 months, and one of my rules that I preach is you don't go in and do search. And I know it goes contrary to some mindset, but you take a hose line with you. And these guys went in to do a search on the bottom floor in an apartment that was the fire and they got hit with a flashover and didn't have a hose line with them. And they declared a mayday. We were able to, they were almost, by the time that we were able to get RIT to the door, they were right at the door. So it was basically just reach in, grab them and pull them out. They were minor injuries, nothing serious. But the lesson learned from that was 2 things. One, why I preach taking a hose line with you. Number 2, the biggest thing was that the RIT team worked exceptionally well, because when they got off the truck, they had all their gear on, they had their mask on, and they were standing at the door with actually right outside the door with another charged hose line. So, they did their job. My old department had an issue. Now it's 2010, I think it was. So it's 10 years ago. Firefighter, they were doing a search in a thing, and we had just finished. I had left that department in 2008, but in 2007 we did a year's worth of training at an old abandoned Holiday Inn. And we spent almost a month on RIT training.
Beautiful. Ron knows all about acquireds. I don't.
Yeah. Well, we weren't allowed to burn the building, but we were able to do anything we wanted to because they were going to take it all down to the ground, but we weren't allowed to
Fantastic.
put fire in it. So we set up a couple of RIT scenarios, and every night we did our training at night, which is really cool. And we did even some of the training where the ladder was working, doing something. They were doing ventilation, and then somebody declared a mayday, and they came to a window, and the ladder had to quickly reposition, and they had to come down the ladder. So we gave our ladder trucks a lot of work on, repositioning and doing stuff. But they had a kid get up to the top of the stairwell, and the fire flashed, and he panicked, and he ripped his mask off, and he was severely burned. His crew saw it, and they called the mayday, and the team outside had him out in under 3 minutes.
Wow.
That's good.
And the reason being is, and I was told by the guy that was leading the RIT team, he credited back to the training that they'd done. You cannot overemphasize enough training, realistic training that doesn't just teach you the skill, but also embeds it in your memory so that it becomes second nature. It's, I don't know, are either one of you guys medics?
I am not.
Okay. Well,
We
it
do
takes-
first aid, but we don't do, we're not paramedics. We don't transport patients here.
Yeah, just EMT, first responder type
Yeah.
deal.
Well, okay, take even your EMT skills. When you first get your license and everything, you look at patients and you're strained like hell the first year trying to remember everything. The
Right.
second year it gets really easy. The third year you can walk in and, okay, this guy's having difficulty breathing. This is this. It becomes second nature to you. Think about that. Just like on the fire side, when you pull up and you look at a structure, you've learned how to read smoke over the years. You can tell if this is in the incipient phase or this is free burning or things like that. Well, it's the same thing with RIT. We haven't gotten to that point where it's second nature to us. We're still in the infancy of RIT, and RIT's been around for what, 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah, I think-
still look at RIT like it's something new.
Well,
We should be past this.
OSHA was 98, I think.
Yeah.
And then NFPA 1407 didn't come out until 2010. So
Right. And now when you look at the new standard, what is it, 1474, I think it is?
Right.
Okay, at 1474, they give you all the things and give you all this information, but we still haven't gotten past that this is something new. We're still treating it like it's not new,
Right.
And we should be past this now. We should not have crews that running around like chickens without a head. We should we should have, and we're just not training on it. We're just not training the right ways on it, and it's not a department wide. And it goes back to me, it goes back to the fire chief. If the fire chief says this should happen, it usually carries through the department, but it's
Right.
not happening because it's not a priority for the chief.
Well, it kind of frustrates me because I agree completely. But if you look at some of our trade journals or magazines, I should say, some of our top magazines that are out there, they're on to the new drone program or, building apparatus, or you have a whole magazine a month dedicated to building firehouses. And then you look for the training sections in that magazine of that same issue, and honestly, there's nothing worth reading. And not that it's not worth reading, but there's no real focus on the training aspect or the teachable moments anymore. These trade journals that are coming out, not all of them, but the majority of them, are really focused on, providing information for chiefs.
the frill.
And it's very frustrating. It's very ad driven, very
It's all about the
I
money.
can't think of the
man.
word. Yeah, pretty much.
I know what you're
And
talking about.
you
It's
know,
all it's amazing when it's like that meme that went around for a while. If you can't pull a second hose line, then you shouldn't be investing in a drone program,
right.
right? Like,
Well, I'll give you a story. I was training chief, and I don't know if you guys have ever had to sit through a strategic planning section.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
oh,
And we sat through 2 days of a strategic planning session, me and my two training officers. At the time, my department was 330 guys. And we sat there, we had the pad and easel and everything like that. And I had a blank sheet over there, and the Fire Prevention Bureau gets up and they talk about all the things that they're going to do. And then the EMS chief gets up there and he throws all the things he's going to do over the next, 5 years. And, the chief of operations throws everything up there. And then they get to training, and I get up and I walk over and I pull this blank sheet and I flip it over, and there's a blank sheet. And the chief looks at me and goes, "What the hell did you do for 2 days?" I know. I said, "It's not what I didn't do." I said, "It's what Chief so-and-so, Chief so-and-so, and Chief so-and-so did." And he looks at me strange. I said, "Nothing, absolutely nothing in the fire service occurs without a training component attached to it.
Right.
We can't change. He wants to go to a new EMS reporting system. Well, how's that going to be rolled out? I have to do it. I have to train the people how to put the reports in. The chief wants this. I've got to do it. So it doesn't matter what I want to do as a training officer. I've got to train everybody to do what you want to do."
It's a good reality.
I mean, and it's a truth. We get caught up in a lot of the minutia out there, and you got to boil it down to what's really the problem. I was asked one time what my hardest thing to do as a training officer, and I said it's to train 330 people to do one thing 330 different ways.
yeah, it does all. I mean, we keep coming back to, right? It's training
Yeah.
realistically, training enough. You see it everywhere. Like you're talking about, Ron. We're getting so carried away. It comes down even to apparatus now. When you look at them, people are buying these trucks for all hazard response, and then you look at it and go, well, the hose is in a terrible place to deploy. You've got your 2.5. The only 2.5 you can get is 12 feet in the air. I mean, you got people climbing on bumpers in order to actually get to any 2.5-inch hose lines. You've got
Yep.
like it's crazy that we've started to. It always baffles me that we go to these salespeople and we let them dictate to us the rigs, the tools, and everything else. But a lot of the time, those salespeople have no experience in the field. Like, it just seems baffling to me that we let people who don't do any of the stuff we do tell us what we need, rather than us going to them and saying, hey, wait a minute. I need this, this, and this. Get it for me, or I go somewhere else. Like,
Yeah.
It's crazy. And training, it baffles me on how many people you encounter that are uncomfortable in SCBA. What does that tell you? If you're uncomfortable in SCBA, you need that to do your job, let alone anything else. You can't do your job without an SCBA. That thing should be like the back of your hand. You should put it on and not even notice it's there. You should be so comfortable with it. Yeah, it's
Absolutely, absolutely. And we find this in our training that we do for our competition, that guys do not understand their air packs.
Yeah. Well, not even that. It goes back to, I think, sometimes with our gear. Understanding the limits of your gear, including your pack. What can you really do with it to accomplish certain things? And
don't get me started on that one.
Well,
when I started in the fire service, I did have a leather helmet, but I had hip boots.
Oh
and
yeah.
I had a long canvas coat. And whenever I went on a structure fire, I had something that protected me. It was called my ears, because I knew when I was getting in trouble.
Yep.
Today, we cocoon firefighters in gear that withstands 1,500 degrees. They've got Nomex hoods, they got gloves, they got everything, that withstands all this. And we're going deeper into structures, and we haven't changed our tactics to keep up with the technology that we have created.
I think it's almost worse than that. Chief Stearns and Angie Stearns talks about it really well, but I think it's even worse than that. I think we've changed our gear to go like all you said, but we have changed our tactics with the push to not apply water till we see the flames and all that. Whereas back before, if you waited that long to apply water, your ears burned off. So you open the bail nice and soon. Like Aaron Fields and so many others are getting back to that, saying, "Hey, we got to open that line. We can't wait to feel the heat because, as you say, Jeff, we feel it too late now because of our gear. We need to understand that bail needs to open a lot sooner than the latest generation or two of firefighters was ever taught. Like I was specifically saying, crawl through the heat, crawl, then open it later. And it wasn't until recent years, last 5-6 years, from people like Aaron Fields and that explaining it the other way. Like, are you crazy? Like, no. So I think it's almost worse. We changed our tactics and our gear, but we changed our tactics to a worse situation. Not only are we saturating our gear in tons of heat now and not cooling the fire, but that means we're not cooling the fire for anybody that's in the building that we're there to help as soon as we could. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that PPEs, it's great. It got so much better for us, but it allowed us to get complacent and forget our objective a little bit. And there's a strong push now by so many people out there to come back around to that water application, which is fantastic.
Right.
And I think it's taken
Well,
hold. But
I'm so old school on many things, but to me, smoothbore nozzles have their place, and I may be controversial in this. If I'm looking at a high rise or I'm looking at a long hallway in an apartment building, the smooth bore, to keep the puppies, wuppies, and guppies out of my line. But give me a good combination nozzle, and I'll fight more fire than most people with a smooth bore will ever think about, because I know I was trained how to use it properly. We've gotten away from training. You can always bring everything, it goes full circle back to our training.
Right.
I'm sorry, it just, to me, if I was going to start a fire department today, the first thing I would do is hire a training division. That's the most important thing. Because
Good point. Very good point.
Because who gets bastardized the most in every department? Fire prevention and training.
Yep.
They get cut the first.
yep.
And let me tell you something. That's where the rubber meets the road. If guys aren't trained to do their job, I don't want to belabor it, but the young man, everybody's younger than me, that took my job in my old department, they've got a really big area that they use for training. It's undercover, and I asked them if I could set the maze up there so I could do some maintenance work. And the chief was all about it and everything like that. So we did, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, I don't need this thing until January. So for July and August, you guys can practice in the maze, and train with it. And I'll spend some time with you and show you how everything works. This is my old department, and I was gone 8 years. Everybody that went on that course died. They all ran out of air. They never even made it to the victim, and they ran out of air because of the new policies that not this fire chief that's there now, but the old fire chief that was after me put in place. They didn't do any fire training. None. Remember, 85% of what we do is routine, mundane crap. 14% is, hey, you know what? We got to really work a little bit. 1%, oh my God. And that 1% is what kills firefighters. I don't care if it's an EMS call, hazmat call, or a fire call. That
Absolutely.
1%, and we're not training on that 1%, because if you train on that 1%, the other 99, it's easy.
It's a great perspective.
It goes back to Dennis Laguerre has a great, I always refer to him when we sort of get down this, he talks about the naturalization of deviancy. And if we determine success as, essentially, as we determine success as everybody went home and the fire went out, then we aren't progressing or changing. I mean, technically under that definition, we could let the whole city burn down, but as long as we evacuated everyone, then it was a good fire, because, hey, the fire went out because the city burned down, there's nothing left to burn. Nobody got hurt because we evacuated everybody. So you start to allow, if you only ever determine your training on that 80%, that 85% that you talked about of the routines, then, and consider all that always as good and never prep yourself for that 1%, then you're just always going to get worse and worse and worse and be less and less prepared for that 1% as time goes on. He does a very good job of describing that.
That makes sense.
Jeff, I got one last question for you here.
Sure.
Is there anything, whether it's technique, or a piece of equipment, or the way they just did something that you've seen over the years in your competition that you really went, wow, that made the difference and was very like spot on?
There's been a lot. That's a tough question, Ron.
I mean, like conversions, use of a webbing, or a standard practice that we teach for like a basic RIT class all the time that just it worked over and over again, or you know what I mean?
It was, I think it was more of the technique that this one team employs on how they make the transfill connection.
Okay.
They really have they have it down pat, because as we were saying earlier, if you're sitting around the kitchen table, it's easy to make the connection. But when you've been crawling through and working, your physical dexterity and gloves is totally different. But these guys have developed a way of one hand cupping the connection, bringing their other hand to it, so that it's kind of like, think about an opening, and you're putting this end here, and when their hands meet, all he does is rotate his hand up and push down, and he makes the connection almost every single time.
Really?
Yeah. Instead of, trying to, your hand is shaking because of, all the physical things like that, and you're trying to hit this target, the guy cups his hand around it and basically gives him a target. He knows where it is because he's got his hand on it first. I see people, grabbing the air pack and holding it steady and then trying to feed this opening onto this, thing, and every one of them misses, or they push it on and it pops right back off because they didn't have it pulled back far enough. I mean,
Yep.
They may lose 15 seconds, but he takes his time. He makes sure he's got it pulled all the way back. He makes sure of this, and then, and every year these guys are like dead on. They get it first time every single time.
Right.
And the other thing that I noticed is they teach the Denver drill so that it makes it easy to lift dead weight up. And in the last 2 years, we've had three all-female teams, firefighters, compete.
Okay.
And most of the guys muscle the guy out because they figure that's the best way to do it. The girls, they don't have the muscle power to just muscle a mannequin out, especially, it's 175 pounds in full bunker gear, boots, and an air pack. They use the technique of putting somebody down, and doing the whole thing. They get them out faster than the guys do if you count from the time that they start to the time that the victim is out the window, I think they do it faster because they use the technique, because they don't have the muscle, but their technique is perfect and they get the victim out.
Right.
And guys have a tendency to just reach in and grab them. And, you know, some people have been upset at us because when you take the guy out and you throw him on the ground instead of, like that, and they want to know why they were penalized. I said, well, you threw him 30 feet across the floor. He was
Yeah.
fine until then. Now
Yeah.
he's in a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
I see that what you're talking about with the technique too is a big place I see all the time is forcible entry when we're teaching that. The students that take the time to set up the play and focus on that technique, by the end of day one, even by lunchtime, they're forcing doors way faster than the ones that just get angry, just go red in the eyes and start going crazy and berserk on tools and reefing things all over the place. That take 5 seconds now, save 5 minutes later. Just
Right.
yeah.
Make haste slowly. Slow is fast.
Yeah.
If you deliberately do things, and let's relate it back to our RIT training. We're not doing the slow, methodical from A to Z training on RIT. We're teaching guys how to, rescue a victim and drag them out, but we're not teaching the incident commanders how to manage the RIT incident. I would love to put a class together. When we did the training at the Holiday Inn, I had St. Lucie County Fire Rescue, City of Stewart, and Martin County, and we had 42 firefighters at the training rotation, 3 battalion chiefs. And in the middle of this, we gave them, okay, we've got a ladder, we had 3 ladders there. Okay, gave them 3 places. They had to ventilate and everything. We had crews searching and everything all over this hotel. And one of my training officers, they were 15 minutes into it. And then one of my training officers goes, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We threw a Mayday in there. And it's the first time that those battalion chiefs had a Mayday in a live scenario with 42 people to work with.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just, we did that 4 times that we got all 3 departments through it. But, that's the kind of training that the incident commanders need.
Right.
Because there were still victims in the hotel that they had to rescue. And now you had a firefighter with a Mayday. That you had your incident within the incident. How do we divide that up? And we bastardize incident command so much in the fire service, not like in the wildland where they use every aspect of it. We only use what? Incident commander, we might use divisions, we use an ops chief, we might
Safety
use
officer.
And a safety officer. But after that, we don't use it. So they had to immediately make a decision, who's going to run the fire, who's going to, so then one battalion chief ran the fire, the other battalion chief ran the RIT, and one battalion chief stayed in command.
Nice.
A lot of shoes to fill.
Yeah. Well, we don't, most of the time in the fire service, we never complete or fill out our incident command. And you know as well as I do, if you're the incident commander and you don't assign people to do stuff, you're it.
Yep.
And then have a Mayday on top of it, and then try to run the whole thing. Here in Florida, a lot of times we have some controversy going on that we've discussed on our Facebook page about changing radio channels, because a lot of departments have that SOP that if the Mayday's declared, then does the Mayday switch channels, or does everybody else switch channels? Discipline on the radio. Think about it. When there's a Mayday, who has enough discipline to shut the hell up and let that guy talk or girl talk?
Yeah. I often fight with this too. I have great discussions with some of my friends about it. You know, are we changing channels? Are we not changing channels? Who's changing channels if we are? And you know, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But mine are the Mayday firefighters already so focused on either trying to get themselves out or get that information out in the form of a Mayday, or they're unconscious or trapped and they can't get that information out. All they can do is hit their man down button. So how are they going to be, or why would they be changing channels?
Yeah, our policy has always been, or my philosophy is, the Mayday does not change channels. The Mayday caller does not change channels. If there is something, okay, you make everybody else on scene switch. One of the things that I instituted at one of the departments was, if there was a Mayday called, if there were two blasts of the air horn, if we weren't fighting fire at the time, you know, or have, you know, to protect the Mayday, everybody had to evacuate and come to the command post so that you gather control of people. Because you know as well as I do, if the RIT team is going in, everybody's going to look and say, well, you know, Pete and Charlie, they don't know shit. You know, I can do better, you know, and everything.
Yep.
And that's how the self-deployments keep going. But if you bring them to a point and make them stand there, and then you give them job assignments, that's the key, is give people something to do so they're not standing around. In other words, okay, RIT team 1 is in. Okay, I want you, and you. Go ahead and change your bottle out. Go get your gear on. Report back to the front door. You know, Chief so-and-so is there. Be ready to go in and, you know, get them out. Okay? I want you to do this. And when you start giving people something to do again, that's the secret to the incident commander or the guy that's running the RIT, is he's got to give people an assignment so that they're not free thinking.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so just to close out here, Jeff, would you just want to sort of do a shameless plug here for yourself, or just tell people about your group and your competition, where they can find out more info, how maybe they can get in touch with you about the competition or anything related, get some of the coolest stickers that I've seen anyways.
I'm working on one for you.
Okay.
I'm working
I love
on
it.
it, guys.
My brother's a frog fanatic, so it'll make him jealous.
Okay.
But yeah, if you want to just let people know how they can get a hold of you, where they can find out more about the competition, how they can enroll in the competition.
Well, the best thing is our Facebook page at Florida Rapid Intervention Operations Group on Facebook. We post a lot of the new things that we're doing, and all of our competitions and videos are there. We also have a webpage, FloridaRITOperationsGroup.org, that we've got a lot of good information on also. And we'll be, like I said, we welcome anybody that wants to compete. It's not just for Florida. We have traveled to Pigeon Forge and done a competition. We've been in Baltimore. You know, we can, the way our organization is, the way our group works is, we don't look to make, and I know this sounds kind of weird, but we don't look to make a fortune. Everybody that works with us believes in paying it forward. So all we ever ask is pay our expenses to where it doesn't cost us anything. So you wanted me to go to Texas and put a program on in Texas, we'll come out and put a program on, but we just don't want to come out of pocket for it. We don't make any money, but you know, we just like to make our expenses.
It's a reasonable request.
It's about the brotherhood. It's about PTB, protecting the brothers. It's about
Right on.
fire service. And everybody believes, I've had a couple people want to join our group and everything, and they're one of their questions is, well, what do we get paid? And I was like, you don't want to work for us. If that's what you're worried about is getting money, then you're in it for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Right.
Your mission
And
statement is not aligning.
yes, it's
With
true.
your goals.
Yeah, we're not about that. We're doing a program in Ocala, and we're going to have 20 teams compete. I've got 16 guys showing up, and we're only charging them $4,000 because that's what it costs us to put it on in Ocala.
It's not bad.
No, for the competition and the training that goes on and everything like that, it's not bad, to do it. And we'll go to, we've had some bids out, for small departments. They would like for us to, come and do some training, and we'll do whatever. It's about the job, and it's about training guys so that if God forbid something happens to them, they can save their own.
Awesome.
Good stuff, yeah. Nathan's tried to con us into forming a team and getting down there, and
I think you guys should.
Why
oh,
not?
we absolutely should.
Get down there and get our butts kicked. We'll be the team that runs out of air before we get to the patient.
Whatever, we'll
stop.
still have fun doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, well, Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we could have you back on in a little while, or in a couple episodes, and I'm sure there's tons more we could talk about. So
Anytime, guys. I thank you for what you're doing, and all the training that you guys do and everything that you do for the fire service. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think it's great. So
appreciate that.
And I appreciate you guys asking me, an old fire dog, to get on and roust around with you young kids.
James, you back?
Yeah, just jumped on. I caught the tail end there, but it sounds like you guys had a good discussion. I'm excited to actually listen to it when I get into the editing mode here. But yeah, thank you, Jeff, for being our first guest. It's been good to listen to you and hear where everything started with your program. And yeah, I look forward to having you on again in the future and actually getting to stay on the whole conversation.
No problem. I appreciate, like I said, I thank you guys for everything that you do.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. I hear nothing but kids screaming downstairs, so I better get down there before I get screamed at.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. Same boat.
All right, guys. Have a good night, and
You
stay
too.
safe out there.
You too.
All right.
Have a good
All
one.
right.
Thanks again, Jeff.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the podcast. We hope you enjoyed our interview with Jeff. If you're looking to get in touch with Jeff, you can reach him on Facebook, and you can also check out the Florida Rapid Intervention Operations group page on Facebook. Sign up for next year's competition when the registration starts, and maybe we'll do a little meet and greet down there next year and set up a booth, and we'll watch the competition. Maybe the RIT nerds will even take part. We'll see what happens. Take care, everyone.